Is it possible to be too much woman? What?
Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Dupree, scouring the globe to bring you stories of courage, passion, and resilience. If I could sum up this podcast into one word, I would use empathy. Now let's get inspired.
Welcome to the Church of Awesome Podcast. I am your host, Brett Dupree. Today we talk to Gina Hatzis, somebody who's too much woman. But before we talk about that, we talk about what's going on in my life, because if I can't be vulnerable, how can I expect my guests to be? It is July 29th, 2020, so life is still scary. Last 2 weeks have been kind of sad for me. The loneliness of this virus and staying at home and not going out, not going for drinks has been getting to me. I remember when I got really sad and ballooned from like 310, 330 to 400 pounds, how I just stayed inside all the time and ate. And it's feeling a lot like that. And it's not so much that I don't feel like going out, which was how it was before, but it's, for me, sadness looks like not wanting to do anything and not want to deal with anything. However, the fact that since the lockdown in February, since I've started working from home and not really going out in March, I haven't gained much weight. In fact, I'm lower than I started today. I weighed in once again under 400 pounds, which always feels good. So it's not completely bad. I have finally got to the point where I'm not eating everything, and it's just so much stress, but it's sad. It's a combination of many sadness. It's a frustrating time to be alive. There's the fact that, honestly, in the United States, there is a chance that this is the end of our democracy. That is a possibility, especially if the Democrats get voted in. There is always a chance that when basically people with fascist tendencies lose elections, they don't abandon their platform, they abandon democracy. And so we'll see what happens if it is a sweeping victory. This could be the end. It's a possibility. I'm not saying it's a probability, but it is a possibility, and that does kind of scare me. I mean, I've grown up indoctrinated into wonders of American democracy, and I don't like fascism much of the next person, and being brown puts me not in the best situation when it comes to who these fascists want to deal with. So there's that, but that's just a small possibility. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but I have to be open to that. But thinking of that, and then all the protests happening and all the clampdown, that's not good. I want free speech, and I want freedom, and I'm on the side of defunding the police and reallocating the resources into things that help the community, and then having the police being more specialized in doing what their job should be, and taking a lot of the burden off them and have them needed to actually deal with that. In most cases, vast majority of cases, someone with a gun is not needed. So there's that going on, and then there's just all the coronavirus. We hit over 150,000 dead in the United States, and we're getting up to 1,000 dead a day again, which is just not feeling good for me. I don't want people to die. I'm one of those weird people who think that we should do everything we can for people to live the happiest, joyful life. Joyous expansion, that's what it does, and that's been weighing on me as well. But then, and I do a lot of doom scrolling. I can't say I've not. I got into Twitter, which was probably a huge mistake because of all because I remember when the George Floyd thing started. I think I've made that joke on here that, the news is my Facebook feed's like, hunky-dory, here's my day. The news is like, ooh, there's some civil unrest in Minneapolis. And Twitter's like, oh my gosh, everything's on fire. And Twitter is constantly everything on fire because, honestly, everything is on fire if you look at it. But at the same time, life is what you focus on. In my own personal life, I have done better. I got this Fast Stick app to do fasting, and that's how I got under 400 pounds. I'm probably up again after I ate 3 donuts today and a pound of ribs. But I am on the downward trend again. My knees feel better than they have since PAX last year, which is the first week of September when I originally hurt my knees, to the point where I started to have a cane. I think it's one of the benefits of inactivity. And probably also my weight going down, and probably even fasting. I think fasting helps my body recover. Every time I don't eat as much during the day, my body feels better, like I'm in less pain. So I think that's important. I don't think fasting or intermittent fasting is for everybody, but when I do it, I feel better, and I think that's the important thing. I do feel better. I shouldn't be eating all day. I don't think that's my body type. I think everyone has a different body type in a sense of where they feel the best. Some people do great with small meals throughout the day and this cherry picking their body's great. I hate that. I feel like crap if I eat healthy throughout the entire day and eat nothing but small meals. It's a terrible feeling. But when I do lower carb and not eat a lot of processed grains and skip a meal, I feel better. Like my body just feels better. So basically, I'm not advocating a diet or dieting period. I advocate for eating a way for your body to feel better. And that's what I do. I feel better. Yeah, sometimes I get hungrier, but once I get in the groove, I can go days without being hungry. And that's such a great feeling, to be honest, because I just get hungry too much. And when I'm hungry, that's when I make terrible decisions. And especially now, I really want to do this because like sugar is generally how I make myself feel better. Sugar, binge watching TV and stuff, but I want to get my podcast out there. I want to redo my website, which I finally got started on. I want to start sending emails to my 300 people on my email list and deal with that. I want to do those things, you know? And I can't do that if I'm just filling myself with food all day and just not dealing with life. I can only control the things I can control. And I'm not saying anyone should ignore anything. I think you should accept. I'm not one of those people who believe you should avoid the news, avoid media. I think you just need to know what it is and what it's selling. Media is selling anger. It's selling emotions. Every story they share is shared in a way to elicit emotion. Sometimes they want you to be happy. So you get the feelings. Those are generally like, puppy saves baby from cute little raccoon. Or they want you to feel angry of this guy who doesn't believe what you believe is now doing something that you don't like. Or they want you to feel scared. War on something. Or is a common household item causing deaths? Which one after the break? Basically, you just have to know the entire media complex is to sell ads, is to get your attention. The more you pay attention to it, the more you'll pay attention to their ads, so that they are bombarding you with emotion. And having that knowledge is arming yourself with that knowledge so you don't get succumbed to that emotion. And so you don't get to the point where you're like, I want to burn everything down, unless you want to burn everything down. Viva la revolution. You know what I'm saying. But today we're talking about somebody who her life changed a lot when she finally took her life in her own hands. It's a very fun interview. A recovering journalist, Gina has spent 26 years as an international corporate and public speaker, specializing in soulful leadership, conscious communication, and epic empowerment. She's also a blogger, a writer, a spoken artist, and host of her show, Spiritual G-Spot, broadcasting in over 70 countries worldwide. She has 2 viral videos amassing over 40 million views and is currently on a global tour as the Spearhead and Visionary of the Too Much Woman movement, a platform for women to shine their glory. Her first book, Celebrating Too Much Woman, is hot off the press. So now here is my interview with Gina Hatzis. Hello, Gina, and welcome to my podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. I am happy you're so chipper.
I've had my coffee, baby.
Why don't you give the people a little introduction to who you are?
Oh, I love that question. It's so funny because usually when people ask that, they're specifically asking for, credentials and what do you do for a living? But since you didn't specify, I'm a truth seeker. I am just curious about the world, about life, about people. I follow my joy. I prioritize my pleasure. And that is how I run my life. On that journey, I've been a journalist. I call myself a recovering journalist, a 26-year speaker, and the spearhead of a movement called the Too Much Woman. I could keep going, but...
Were you always a truth seeker? Somebody who always thought within and would look for your pleasure growing up?
No. Oh, gosh. No. Well, I think intuitively as children, we're all like that. We're curious. And yeah, we do prioritize our pleasure. I think we're born that way. I mean, no baby's like, let me just pause this pleasure desire and take life really seriously. I think we all naturally are curious and joyful. And then, like everyone else, we start to grow up. We hear that there are things that are more important, to stop being so childish, so silly, so frivolous, and even to stop being curious. We stop asking questions. We stop our wonderment. We stop looking up at the sky, at the birds, at the planes, being fascinated by life. And so I've had to consciously regroup and retrain myself every day. And it is a muscle that you can flex, and it does get easier.
You're part of this too much woman ideal. I see that on your Instagram. Were you always, so I guess gregarious is the word?
Was I always too much?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to say, I think what the too much woman is really about is it's all the ways that I've been told my whole life that I was too something. Everything from too emotional, too sensitive, too smart, too vivacious, too happy. For God's sakes, too voluptuous, too energetic, too dramatic, and how over time in my life, I was punished in different ways. Sometimes it was subtle. Sometimes it was overt for being too much, for being what I naturally was. So I dimmed and I started to pack things away. I started to morph who I was. I started to try to thicken up and tone it down. And what I found was that people were still critical and life was still going to run the way that it was going to run. And I didn't want to not be myself anymore. And so I've come back to owning what I call my too muchness, which is really just means leaning more into myself. What it looks like I have grown and changed, but what I've really done is come full circle back to who I am. So your question is a difficult one for me to answer. I think I've always been that way. I just always haven't felt safe to express it.
Can you think of an incident where you did dim your light in the past?
Oh, good God. Yeah, I can think of about 1 million. I'm a speaker. That's what I do. That's all I do. In the speaking world, and because I've been doing this for over 2 decades, it started off, it's a very male-dominated industry. At least it certainly was at the time that I started. My clients at the time were predominantly corporate. And so I definitely felt that I had to man up, that I had to be less feminine. I almost had to masquerade in a body that was obviously a woman's, but not show it. I had to almost make them forget so that I could be accepted, so that I would be hired, so that I would be taken seriously within an executive team in an organization. So I used to change how I dressed. My hair was in a perpetual severe bun. I bought fake glasses. I don't even wear glasses just to look the part. I bought very masculine suits. I would bind my breasts. Crazy shit, really, because I believed that was the only way to be taken seriously. Gosh, I could go on and on, but that's one way that I did it. I thought I had to man up to be accepted and play the game.
Is there a moment that stands out to you where you made the decision that you weren't going to do this anymore?
Yes. It's actually the heart of my viral video called The Too Much Woman. And I remember I was at a corporate talk. It was the biggest corporate talk I had done to date at that time, a few thousand people. It was a sea of men. It was like 99% men. And I decided I was going to kill this speech because the panel of speakers were all notoriously successful men. And I was the only woman speaker in a 2-day corporate event. So I said, I'm going to kill this. I'm going to prove to them. So I manned up, as I said. I looked like a man. I dressed like a man. I went up on the stage and I killed my talk. I gave it everything. I prepped hard. I psyched myself up and I nailed it. I knocked it right out of the park. I got a standing ovation. I was the only person. So there I am feeling so good about myself, right? I glide off the stage. I'm feeling like I'm on fire. I'm floating, literally floating. And I start to walk. It was held at a big, beautiful hotel. I start to walk towards the parking lot to my car. A man from the audience comes up to me and he says, "Hey, I just heard your talk. It was fantastic." And I said, "Thanks." And he said, "Do you mind if I walk you to your car?" And I was like, "Well, sure." I thought he just wanted to say something about my talk or ask me a question. As we approach my car, he grabs my elbow and he pulls me close. I remember his nails felt like claws, like talons, and he pulls me close to him and he whispers, "I have a fetish for librarian types." It was like, boom, everything just became so clear to me that here I was trying to look the part of the man and I still was objectified. I still wasn't safe. I still wasn't okay. And I remember getting in the car, driving on the highway. This is in downtown Toronto, Canada, where I live, driving on the highway. And I let the windows open and I was just crying, just tears streaming down my face because here I thought I was at the top of my game and I was still reduced to just a woman with breasts who was a sexual object. And I remember crying with frustration. And that was the turning point. I said, no more. No more. I'm going to be and show up as the greatest expression of me, Gina, whatever that means. And for me, that means feeling very feminine and bold and wearing red lipstick and letting my hair go wild. That feels like the most me. And I am no longer going to pretend to be anything else. Yeah, my life's shifted in huge ways since then.
So how was it at first letting yourself out? That had to be kind of vulnerable.
You know what? It's always vulnerable. It's always vulnerable. I mean, I've been on this path now for a few years. It's always risky. I mean, if you follow me on social media, I'm constantly daring myself to push the boundaries and show up more and more and more and more like myself. But yeah, initially, for sure, it's hard because, all the messages that I was really pushing against, all the boundaries, all the lines that I was trying to scribble outside of were coming right up to the surface. It was scary as hell. And there are a few things that I had to do to really center myself around that. I had to get around people who would encourage me. I had to get around people who would hold the space for me before, after a talk. When I'd come back and say, I don't know if it's okay. They'd be like, it's okay. You're doing the right thing. I had to remember that what I was doing was about something bigger than myself. It was giving not even just women. I mean, it's called the Too Much Woman movement. It's really giving everyone the space to show up fully as themselves. And so I guess it is vulnerable. And I guess what really fuels me is knowing and receiving messages from people who say, because you do this, I feel like I can do this. And there's nothing there. Other people give me my courage legs for sure. For sure.
So how'd you go about finding people who supported you?
I didn't go about it. Here's the interesting thing. I did everything a little bit backwards. I just decided I was going to do this thing for me. Interesting backstory. I have a viral video that's hit over 50 million at this point. It's called The Too Much Woman. But that video, or that speech rather, was for a tiny intimate event here in Toronto, Canada. And it was the first speech in over 24 years that I had written for myself. Usually a speaker writes for the audience, right? For the intended outcome. But it was the first time I said, I'm going to write this thing for me. I'm going to speak my truth. I'm going to tell my story. It's not for anybody else. This is the first time I'm just doing it for me in this little small venue. But what happened is it was shared on social media. And after it was shared on social media, it went viral and then it went uber viral and it was shared by some big names. And because of me, again, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't a business plan. It wasn't something strategic. But because I dared to do that for myself, it magnetized people to me. People want to be around other people who either speak their truth in a language that they can articulate themselves, or someone who is modeling a possibility that they want to embody. So I don't advertise, I don't spend a red cent on marketing. People gravitate to my message because it resonates with them. And I think that's what the truth does naturally.
One thing that really stood out to me is the fact that you shared yourself in your story. There's just something immensely powerful of sharing your stories. I'm talked to a lot of people who are working on becoming public speakers, and they just want to get up there and talk about all this amazing information that they have. But the true way to connect with people is to share who you are with them, and they will come with you.
Yes. Number one rule is facts tell, stories sell. And when I say sell, it's building rapport. I mean, a speaker can teach nothing unless they have rapport with their audience. And I think this goes beyond speaking, of course. I think this is for anybody, whether you're a teacher in any capacity, and most of us are, even a parent, even a friend. I've found myself in this speaker coaching situation because I just find so many people have so many great things to teach. And we package it in this expert paradigm. And I think that expert paradigm is dying, where speakers of the past were big dudes in suits, like standing on the stage, pointing their finger saying, you do this, and you do this, and you do this. I mean, that's an old dying paradigm. We see it dying in our medical world. We see it dying in politics. No one's interested in the expert anymore. What we're looking for are educators. And the shift in that is an educator actually invites the participant or the student or the audience member to come to their own truth by seeing themselves in the other person's story. I coach to this. I'm a huge advocate for there's ways that we can teach information, but it really comes down to building rapport, and that comes through storytelling.
So how do you craft a speech?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I do have a formula that I use for sure, but it's funny because it's a formula that I've only actually come to understand in the past few years since I've started coaching speakers. Prior to that, it was an unconscious formula. So interestingly enough, people started asking me that all the time, and I had to really sit with, how the hell do I do this? And so there's definitely a formula, there's definitely a rhythm to it, but a lot of it is predicated on storytelling, on a rhythm, and on building rapport. I always say, you spend most of your speech building rapport, which is trust. with your audience, and then you can teach them something, and then you connect with them and share how your story has something to do with them. I've learned it. I've learned it by teaching it.
So you are someone who teaches speakers. You speak. You have this book coming out, Too Much Woman. Do you ever still feel the fraud phenomenon, that self-doubt of who am I to do this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my book is out. It's called Celebrating the Too Much Woman. It just hit its 1-year anniversary. Do I ever get imposter syndrome? Yeah. Oh gosh. Last year I had the opportunity to speak at the International Women's Summit, and I was on the stage with people who are my heroes, like heroines, Lisa Nichols, Liz Gilbert of Eat, Pray, Love, like some crazy Glennon Doyle, some of the most incredible people in the world. And I remember I thought to myself, I'm just going to go and I'm just happy to be there. I'm just happy to sit in the seats with them. I'm happy to lunch with them. I'm not going to say much other than my speech on the stage. I'm not going to, I was on a panel. On this panel, there was all of us in a line. And I thought, well, they're just going to have me at the corner on the end, like just dangling off the side of the stage because no one wants to hear me. There's all these incredible people. And somehow I landed right in the middle. And, on the left of me, I think was Laverne Cox. And on the right was Lisa Nichols, who's like the world's best speaker. I'm sweating because I'm thinking, why am I even here? What am I even doing? So I stayed silent for most of that panel conversation until someone from the audience asked me directly a question. And I had to shake myself because I thought, you're asking me? You want to know my opinion? And I remember tapping into my answer. And what happened after that was Lisa Nichols started banging on the table and she stood up and gave me an applause. And the people on the left said, don't ask me that question. Whatever Gina said, I'm going to go with that. And they kept affirming me. And after that panel conversation, Lisa Nichols grabbed me by the shoulders and said, you have everything. You are everything. You deserve to be here. She gave me the best pep talk. And I always remember that because, imposter syndrome implies that somebody has more and we are less. And what that experience taught me more than anything is that anyone could be on a panel. Everyone has a story. Everyone could be interviewed on a podcast. Everyone has something that they've learned in their life that would be of value of others to appreciate. I remind myself every time I feel a little bit of that imposter syndrome, I'm like, damn, we all have a story. I could talk to anybody. And I do. I go to the grocery store, anywhere I go, I talk to anybody. And every single person has a story of value. Everyone has something to teach. That's what helps me reframe it.
That is amazing. I love Lisa Nichols.
She is the bomb.
Yeah, that's actually one of the fun parts of this podcast is reaffirming that fact. Just going to be totally honest. I found you randomly. I just randomly sent people, the first 10 people I found on Instagram I sent, and everyone who has replied to me and come on my podcast has been amazing, learning about people's story.
I'm a former journalist, as I said. I have a dream. I mean, I'm on tour. Well, I was on tour before COVID. I've been on tour for 2 years for the Too Much Woman. What my tour is about, it's funny because I go from city to city to city to city, and people come up to me and they don't say to me, "Oh, I love your book. Tell me more about you." They come up and say to me, "Oh, I love your book. Let me tell you about me." Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be heard. Invisibility suffocates the soul. And so I create my tour around showcasing local people. My events are all about the local people, what they're doing. I don't care if they're knitting something in, their bedroom at night. I want to showcase everyone because everyone has a story. Everyone has value. Everyone has something fascinating about them if you know to ask the right questions. So yeah, I applaud you for that because I think it's true. It's absolutely true.
So if somebody is out there and wanting to kind of break out of their shell, what advice would you give them?
What do you mean break out of their shell?
They want to speak. They want to tell their story. They want to wear red lipstick for the first time, color their hair purple.
Yeah.
Shine their light.
Yeah.
And whatever that means to them.
Well, I think there's a couple things. And the reason I ask what you mean by that is because sometimes people think that being courageous, being daring, living your best life is like jumping off tall buildings and quitting the job and dyeing your hair red like I do or wearing. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's speaking up in a meeting. Sometimes it's asking your boss for a raise. Sometimes it's saying no when you are a people pleaser and you always say yes. Sometimes it's asking for help around the house. So I think it's important to say that daring to be yourself, to shine, to whatever language you want to use, it doesn't have to be these ginormous things. We don't have to leap off tall buildings and crap our pants. It's the smallest pieces. And sometimes, I've had people reach out to me and say, I wore red lipstick for the very first time. in my life. And I actually went to the grocery store wearing red lipstick, something I never thought I would do. And I felt amazing. Or I've had people say the total opposite end of the spectrum. I came out to my parents because I felt courageous watching your videos. I think it's important that we look at what's meaningful for you. And if you're in that space, you feel like you're dimmed, you want to be more self-expressed, you feel like you're not showing up fully as yourself, two things. You need to find a tribe. And when I say a tribe could be one person. You need to find people who will support you and celebrate you in that, because life is all about ebb and flow. I am on top of my game a lot of the time, but I do have moments of doubt. And I have a very steady, I call it my little consult, my little team of 3 people that are there to remind me who I am. And so if you don't have that person or that tribe, come to mine. On Facebook, I have 2 incredible groups. It's all about people. One of them is just for women. It's the Too Much Woman. And the other is called Spiritual G-Spot, which is all inclusive. And it's really a place where people can show up fully as themselves. And we need spaces where people say, yes. Whatever you are, yes. However you show up, yes. Whatever you say, yes. Whatever you want to wear, yes. Those 2 things. Number 1, get really clear about what that means for you, because it's different things for different people. People look at me and they see that might feel like I'm outrageous. And I hear a lot of people say, oh, I can't do that. I can't be like you. I can't self-express. And thank God, like the world does not need a billion Ginas. Trust me. Decide what that means for you and then get some people who are going to support you in that and make the first step the smallest one possible, because it's a muscle and we flex it just like going to the gym. Maybe it's putting on, I use the red lipstick analogy because I hear that all the time. Like, I wore red lipstick, but maybe it's the smallest thing, like saying no to one person a week, disappointing one person a week. I mean, you got to flex that muscle until you start to become more resilient.
Oh, 100% agree. When I think back to my personal journey, one of the biggest steps for me was just wearing cologne because I just spent my entire life like not wanting to stand out in any way possible.
Yeah.
And so just putting on something to smell nice just felt like a big step.
Yeah, I totally get that. And, for me as a woman, my whole life, I come from a legacy of obesity. My grandmother was obese. Her mother was obese. I mean, everybody in my family struggles with their weight. And so my whole life, I was told that this was my destiny, that it wasn't safe, that it was wrong, that I had to fix it. So I oscillated between, and I was a dancer. I have a dance background. So I oscillated between loathing my body, hiding my body, not wanting to draw attention, but also wanting to dance and do the thing that I love. So for me, I'm such a journey. I mean, I went from a place where I used to get bra minimizers, which are like bras that make your breasts look smaller. So no one would notice me, wearing very baggy clothing, trying to look as small as possible, to now, I mean, if you see me on social media, you wouldn't recognize me. It's been a journey though. Yeah, it's exciting.
So I'm just curious on your take on this. What does feminine leadership look like?
Oh gosh, this is good. Okay, this is a whole podcast in and of itself. Feminine leadership for me is leaning into feminine qualities. So it's not necessarily about women. I think it's really important. We all have feminine and masculine attributes. So a more feminine style leadership is not about being assertive, domineering, controlling. Like I said, it's that expert paradigm. Like, I know what's best. Feminine leadership is soft, it's curious, it's receptive, it's open to feedback, it's creative, it's spontaneous. Those are some of the attributes that embody feminine leadership. And what's unique about it, what I see, especially, as I say, a lot of my work is corporate. What's unique about it is it's really allowing people, at the end of the day, allowing people to be leaders themselves. Masculine leadership is important too. Both of those elements are important. But masculine leadership is really about structure and do it this way. And it's very assertive and black and white, where feminine leadership is more fluid. It's inviting people to step in and lead with their strength. And I think that's a very different way than the way that the world is operating right now. But we're shifting.
So what does it look like working with you?
It's a frickin' blast. So here's another thing that I flip for myself first. Everything I do is for myself first. It's like, let me figure this out. So I've always taken life very seriously. I was born into this world like with a pad of paper and a pen. I always try to analyze and overthink things, and I'm very left brain, but there's a part of me that wants to and believes that I want to override the self-limiting belief that life is hard. that life is meant to be suffered, that you pay bills and you die, that mentality. And so I now prioritize joy and pleasure in my life. And it's been a process, but I understand that when I prioritize pleasure, prioritize joy, really fill myself up with all those good feelings, I'm a better speaker, mother, lover, friend. I'm better in all the ways. And so working with me, I prioritize that. I tell people, don't spend time doing the thing that you hate. Lead with your strength. Spend time doing as much as possible the thing that you love, the thing that brings you joy. Make that a part of your everyday, not just something you do like on Sunday mornings because you got all your work done. So working with me that's really the guiding principle. Let joy lead the day.
Do you have any fun success stories you'd like to share?
Success in business or?
Well, someone who worked with you and...
Oh, sure. So one of the things that I've been called to do, which was never part of my plan, is to coach speakers or people who want to be speakers. I've just in the past year, I've had about, maybe over a dozen speakers who've worked with me who've never, ever taken the stage before. Like ever, petrified to speak, petrified to tell their story, knowing that there was something in them that was calling them in that direction. And they have gone uber viral with millions of views online. And not only that, it's not even just about the views. It's about what shifted in them. You know, people think they're coming to me to learn to be speakers, but it's hard. That's like the end result. What it's really about is coming back to worthiness. It's coming back to understanding that you have value, that there's something in you to share. And I've seen them transform. I've seen their businesses transform. I've seen their direction transform. I've seen them lit up in ways that some of them, even their physicality, if you can believe it, Brett, transforms. Like some of these people, there's like a before and after picture because we change when we step into our truth. Like we change in so many ways. It is such an absolute gift to watch people transform in that way. And all they really need, it's not even about me. I'm holding the space and I'm giving them a container so they can give themselves permission to step into that place. And I just love it.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the end of our time together. And one thing I like to ask my guests is to give a 1 minute of motivation. You can imagine this as if you have a time machine and you're going back to your 8-year-old self and you want to convey everything you need to live a happy, joyful life. But you only have a minute until you're plopped back into the future. Or you can think of it also as condensing your entire life's mission, purpose into a minute.
Oh my gosh, a minute. That's torture for a speaker. all my life's learnings into a minute. Oh gosh. Okay. So I'm just going to go with what comes out. I would take my little 8-year-old's face in my hands and I would tell her that everything that she is, curious, dramatic, sensitive, emotional, fun, funny, gregarious, outgoing, introverted, extroverted, everything that she is perfect. And that the world is going to constantly tell her that she's wrong. It's going to constantly restrict her, tell her to dim, tell her to change, tell her to morph, tell her that it's unacceptable, tell her that it's inappropriate, tell her that she has to thicken up, to put her fingers in her ears and just go la 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 la. Because as you are in your too muchness, as you are exactly as you need to be. And in fact, I would even venture further to say, if you dare to lean into the thing that you were told was wrong about you, you will find yourself living your best life. If you dare to lean in to your too muchness, you will find your highest expression of yourself discovered.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. I really enjoyed listening to your story on how you tried at first to really fit into the box, what other people say are successful. You have your hair this way so that people will take you seriously. Wear your blouse that way. I'm sorry, I don't understand women's clothing, but I really enjoyed how you went from that and then just decided and discovered that when you can be yourself, put yourself out there, that you truly resonate with people, being your vulnerable, loving, joyful self, being naturally who you are and just shining that light out there, thus encouraging other people to do the same and live in a way that is satisfying and just hard to find a word, but awesome. So thank you so much for being on my podcast and thank you so much for everything you do for this world.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity and big love to you and your tribe.
May your day be special.
Thank you.
There you have it, folks. That was my interview with Gina. What a gregarious, fun interview. I like when people are chipper and have their coffee in the morning. Sometimes I wonder if you can tell my morning interviews from my evening interviews since I work a 9 to 5. I feel like I have a little bit more energy, more pep in my step in the evening or when I do multiple interviews. You won't hear them for a couple of weeks, but man, my last 2 interviews did not have a lot of energy. But that's what happens. I'm 18 interviews in the pipe of ready to go. So at least there'll be 98 episodes. Anyway, let's talk about Gina. Yeah, I like to elaborate on the cologne thing. I used to be painfully shy. I mean painfully. I used to have extreme social anxiety to the point where everything I did was wrong. No matter what. I can remember a time where I was in the classroom and I sneezed on some Kleenex and I couldn't think of which was more embarrassing. Leaving the dirty Kleenex on my desk or getting up and throwing it away and have everyone look at me. And that would almost cause, I wouldn't say a panic attack, but that did cause a lot of fear and anxiety. And I do remember the time of wearing cologne. When I went to change my life, I listened to pickup artists. Not super proud of that, as now I'm an adult and much more mature, and listening to a bunch of people who just want to, get laid isn't the best, but I did listen, and it was David D'Angelo, and he was talking about wearing cologne, and that was something he encouraged people to do, because he talked about how some people were so shy that they didn't want to wear cologne, because wearing cologne meant you were standing out. And that was one of my biggest fears, was people looking at me, people noticing me, and standing out. And so that was when I really just wanted to change my life, and that was one of my big steps. I was going to buy cologne. And the story of my cologne, which is Signature Kenneth Cole, which I still wear today because I still like the smell, and that was over 20 years ago, but it just smells like me. Well, anyway, the story of that is I was actually going to buy cologne and buy some nicer clothes because I just wanted to wear some nicer clothes, which I hate doing. One of my favorite days of my life is when my friend Tim and Gina helped pick out clothes for me, and they took me out to dinner because it was fun for them, and they don't realize just how much that helped me at that time, because there's nothing more terrifying at the time. And I still don't really like it today, but I'm better at it, of buying clothes and wondering if they look nice. Back then, especially, it was extreme anxiety inducing. And so I was going to JCPenney's to buy clothes, thinking about getting cologne, and one of those cologne ladies, we'll call them, was like, "Can I spray this on you?" And I was like, "Sure." And she sprayed it on me, and then she did her sales pitch. I was like, "I would like to buy it." And she's like, "Wow, really?" Because it was probably like the first sale after hundreds of people. But the thing is I really like the smell. It was almost like the universe was saying, "Here is your cologne. You ask, and therefore you shall receive it." Maybe at that time I manifested that cologne. And it's the cologne I wear today. And people constantly say how good I smell, especially when I go to the Penny Arcade Expo in an area where people do not smell nice, because real nerds shower. That saying exists because so many nerds don't. Whew. But anyway, I still get compliments on smelling nice with that cologne, and it feels good. It feels good to stand out and being able to break out of that shell. And so having people out there like Gina who help people embrace their true selves and embrace being them. And remember, not all of us are speakers. You don't have to be a speaker to embrace yourself. You can just be the best mother, but also put on that dress that makes you feel pretty. It's okay to treat yourself nice. You don't always have to sacrifice for others. You gotta always do things for yourself. It's not selfish to do things for yourself. In fact, it's almost recharging. Anything that recharges your battery allows you to give more. And the more you are your more real, authentic self, the more you can give, the more you can serve. And just listen to Gina's story. That's what happened. She spent her whole time trying to fit into a box, trying to find a way to serve others from a different ideal. But then once she found a way to fill her battery with being herself, being her authentic self, everyone then started to flock to her, and she was able to help people from where she is out and help people authentically. And if you are trying to be a coach or something along those lines, listen to people like Gina who sell authentically. And if you sell authentically, you don't get that feeling of salesmanship because you're not selling something. You're offering yourself and you are being compensated for what you provide, and everything just falls into place. So if you want to work with Gina and learn more about this wonderful person who shared the stage with Elizabeth Gilbert, Lisa Nichols, Glennon Doyle Dr, Christiane Northrup, Cheryl Strayed, and Laverne Cox at the International Women's Summit, proudly celebrating the rise of the feminine. You can find her on social media at Gina Hatzis. I follow her on Instagram. She is super fun. And you can also go to her website, www.ginahatzis.com. Of course, this will all be in the description. Thank you for listening to episode 80 of the Joyous Expansion Podcast. Wow, 80, 20 to go until we reach the 100. How cool is that? If you want to email me at any reason, email me at BRE2TsDUPR2Es@joyousexpansion.com. You can also like, subscribe, review, anything like that would help me tremendously, and I would love you forever. In fact, I love you forever just for being here. You can find me on my website, joyousexpansion.com, more episodes at pod.joyousexpansion.com, and of course at Instagram at Joyous Expansion, Twitter at Joyous Expansion, LinkedIn at Joyous Expansion, and Facebook at Increase Your Joy, because my SEO game is terrible. Once again, thank you so much for being you. I love you for being you. I'm Brett Dupree, the champion of authentic joy, catalyst of transformation of the Church of Awesome, and the Joyous Expansion Life Coach. Wishing you once again to be love, to be joy, to be awesome. And now play my jingle.
JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Come and say hello to Brett Dupree. He is an inspirational life coach. Good for you and good for me. He turned my life from grey to blue. I'm sure he'll do the same for you. Get in touch and you'll see your life will change dramatically. JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Yeah.